Good evening and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may remember me, know me from Sound Image Productions, and I've got a couple closed roadie Facebook groups, one called Death by Loadout and another one called the Backstage Pass. Come check us out. Tonight, with me, near me, my dear, dear good friend, Kyle Thomas.
You're 6 feet. We're illegal.
I think it were like 7 feet.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I put that extra one in for my chick. She just worries about you, man.
Yeah,
She doesn't know what kind of bubble you're keeping.
I don't know what kind of bubble you're having either.
I stay in the confines of my gated community, I think. Keep it pretty close. How you been doing, brother?
Good, man. How about yourself? You've been busy. I see your lovely mother sent us some cookies. I really appreciate
It's a candy tin full of some lovely candies. Mom and Dad did that, sent us up. I just went another turn around the planet, so they sent us some candies. Good. And you know how moms are. They want to make sure you're warm, so she sent me my yearly jammy.
Well, you know how this goes. You hate candy, so at least, it storm rolls into the other thing. It's like...
Not a big candy fan, huh?
Not a big candy fan, but our great man Mike Brown's birthday is today. He's definitely getting some of these candies.
The octopus's birthday today. We took him to lunch and had a good time with him. That's our director and executive producer, co-executive producer. The great Mikey Brown is 33 years old today, and we want to wish him a happy birthday. Without Mikey, look at Tony Lewis already with the pink Sharpie. Tony, I'm going to slap a bitch. Seriously, you take that pink Sharpie, you know what to do with it. And we love him, and we couldn't do it without him. He handles a lot of the IT stuff. He's a general all-around guy. What a wonderful, we couldn't be more lucky, so we want to wish him a very happy birthday. Happy birthday, Michael. And listen, I want to talk about something real quick. I haven't had to do this before in the show. We're at show 40, depending on what you're counting, 41 or 47.
We'll call it 40.
We'll call it 40. But last week we didn't do well. We had some technical problems, and I think I just wasn't in it. I won't lie. I think my head wasn't where it needed to be. So I want to apologize to my audience. I am lucky enough to have some great friends that help me do this and some great friends that come on the show. And we do this pretty well for the most part. And last week was not an example of that. So I apologize, and we will do better. We can do better, and we will do better. And I think tonight's show will show us that. So thank you for bearing with me, and accept my apology, please. Also, I wanted to thank your lovely girlfriend who I'm known for sleep issues, not being able to sleep well and staying up very, very late on an average day.
Yeah, you got some problems. Seriously.
I am known to see
this guy's up till like 5 in the morning. He's up at 8 every day.
That's pretty regular. Yeah, it's a thing. And she made me these lovely brownies that were very good, by the way, really delicious. And I don't know, they had some kind of secret potion in them or something. I didn't take it to the chemist to get it broken down. I just trusted it. But I thought it was very sweet of her. Susie Dugan, thank you, Susie. That was extremely sweet of you to send the brownies over. Thank you, honey. And my good friend Chris Wilson, he's a badass in his own right. He's just like us. He's an incredible audio guy, an A1, and he's not working as much as he should be or would traditionally be working. So he's turned his. I had some earrings I got from my gal, some Lineaway earrings that I put up on one of our roadie pages. I showed a picture and it said, just got my girlfriend some earrings, and everybody lost their minds because they're kind of unique. It's the little Lineaway, the computer, what is this?
They're 3D printed line arrays. It looks
arrays.
Like a set of JBLs or something, some generic brand, but they're pretty cool looking.
Yeah, and my girl's got a pair of them. I'm not sure if she'll ever wear them, but she told me she thought they were cute. But regardless, I know that right down the alley of something. Maybe Susie, I know your girl's in the game, and she's an audio badass in her own right. So if you could please give her those for me,
that's very sweet
as a loving gesture and acknowledgement of her kind generosity. Also, I wanted to thank folks for turning in this weekend. We had the long 4-inch. I mean, we would really talk this thing up. We put a lot of hours into it. I mean, a lot of hours. It's really hard to explain how many hours in practice. And
we sure did.
Yeah, and the Big Love Benefit Concert, well, that came out this weekend, and we just thank everybody that frequented it and purchased it and helped support it. It was definitely an effort from the heart, some love in there, that went into building that thing and bringing in some of the artists that came with us and some of the technicians. And
I don't think it's going to be the last you hear about it. I think we're transferring maybe to looking at some Access TV or some other viewing options for you guys. So stick around and to hear a little bit more about what we're going to do with it.
Well, that's really good to hear because I think it has maybe a little bit more leg to it. It might be able to do a little bit more, but it did pretty good. I was pretty taken with some of the interest that was shown in it and some of the money that was raised, which of course will benefit through Sweet Relief and Project Resiliency and Raven Drum Foundation. Sound folks, stagehands and production people. So this is pretty much people in our business that have been affected by the last 10 months of not working. So you can reach out to them if that's something that you need assistance. They might be able to help you out.
Yeah, their forms for filling it out for aid are really easy. It's pretty basic. You just label what you've been doing, the companies you're associated with, and a little bit of a background of your knowledge base and stuff, and how much of a percentage really of your overall that you make every year is based in the entertainment industry. And if it meets a certain amount, you are qualified for whatever it ends up being for you. But it's definitely a great help.
All right, Jorge Eduardo has sent us a reminder. What's that say, buddy?
BLBC is still live until Saturday at 12 midnight.
So the Big Glove benefit concert is tickets are still available to view it if you didn't get to on its original air date from, I guess, till this Sunday at midnight. Is that what he's saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, if you haven't got a chance to see it, I think you'd enjoy it a great deal. And it was exciting, good stuff, and it supports a really good cause and some people that would love it. Also, it looks like Jackie from Slow Fibers checked in. She's saying hi to Susie. And now you guys have some matching earrings. I really am lucky to have one of the best girlfriends on the planet.
I know Jackie's the best. I love Susie too. So you guys got to meet and actually talk one day. We got to get them together.
My girl's she's wonderful, and your girls are great, and I can't imagine that only going well. Perfect, good stuff. Listen, thanks for all the stuff you've been doing this week and kind of getting stuff on board. I know you had some things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So. You remember Sammy, so we got a good buddy, Sam Hurley, good monitor engineer in the area. He also got these Sweet Strings packs together for me and Vinny to present to you guys. They're really quality strings. He goes by these Cryo Elite kind of technology. So this little kid is crafty, and if you're looking for some strings, you should check this out.
A little kid.
He's fucking badass. I mean, you think about anybody in their 20s. I'm very impressed with his
that he came up with that.
It's incredible. So if you guys want some strings, some cryogenically treated strings, check out Sweet Strings.
Very nice of you. We'll love Sammy. We want you to succeed, and there's a great product. We don't talk about anything that we don't believe in here, so regardless of money or friendship, and those things are pretty cool. So right on. Good stuff. You good?
Yeah, buddy.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to tonight.
Oh, man. I'm excited to talk to this young lady. Tonight we got us a special guest. You guys, I'm always trying to reach out and interesting and exciting people. You tend to see a bunch of my old pro friends come on and they're exciting. They have their own unique perspective. But we ran across a friend of a friend who's this young lady that she's kind of got an extraordinary career today. She's been in the game about 12 years. She graduated with honors from Rhode Island College. She works in the industry as a lighting technician, a lighting designer, kind of an all-around lighting badass. About the past, a little over a decade, toured with such bands as Ani DiFranco, Heart, Pink, one of the best shows in rock and roll, by the way, Pink's lighting show, and the rest that Pink gets up to, incredible, amazing, wonderful woman. Tonight, this young lady has worked with Pink recently, and we've been fortunate enough to get her on the show. Her name is Gabi Scheff. Good evening, Gabi Scheff. How are you this evening?
I'm great, Vince. How are you?
Oh, dear. It's really wonderful to have you on. We're doing fine over here. Like I said, we're kind of recovering from a little kick in the butt from wanting to do this thing as best we can. And sometimes technology is just funny, but we seem like we got a good connection with you this evening. We're really excited about that. How have you been doing during this last, almost a year now?
Almost a year now. It's pretty wild to think, but I've been keeping myself quite busy, too busy, maybe. I'm very blessed to be able to say that I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, I know that you took this time to continue some of your learning desires or passions, things in higher education. How's that going for you?
It's going well. So actually, once we kind of realized that it wasn't going to be just 6 weeks of heading home and waiting for our tours to pick back up, I realized I was going to have some time on my hands. And I was also realizing that we were going to have quite a journey ahead of us. So I actually decided to study clinical mental health counseling. In the meantime, I think it's something our industry could use a little bit more love on,
Sure.
in general. And so I'm happy to be able to kind of dig into that and use this time for something at least productive.
Do you plan on coming back to the industry when we get back to going? I would say probably in the next 4 to 6 months, something like that. What's your plans for the future?
Well, I'm going to finish out this program because it's got all my money right now. But, we're going to see. I mean, I've definitely always played my life with a little bit of the no plan, kind of let the world around me steer my decisions, which has turned out pretty okay so far. So
Yeah.
we'll see where the wind takes us.
I have a funny, no matter what you end up doing, you're going to land on your feet. You seem like a very smart young person. How did you end up getting in our business? What drove you towards, more specifically, how did you get up into our business in lighting specifically?
Okay, I know we only have an hour, so this could literally be like
If you could
like a whole night in the bar, right?
The elevator speech on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a very artistic family. My parents are both music educators, both musicians, singers. And so we grew up kind of familiar with the theater world. And I went off to undergrad to be an English major. And I got to my freshman orientation and looked at my English major classes. And I looked at my friends' theater major classes and I went, no, you're right. That looks way more fun. So I was really lucky at Rhode Island College. We had the opportunity to work in the Roadhouse that they had there. We had a really, really kind of a world-class performing arts series there. So we had the opportunity to work as stagehands while we were in undergrad, which is an amazing opportunity. And the reason I ended up doing lighting was because my brother did audio and he was already in that program. And he said, hey, quit it. You're dating my friends. You're up in my program. Like now you're gonna steal my job too. I was like, no, it's cool. It's cool. You do audio. I'll do lighting. That's a thing, right? So by the time I graduated, I got hooked up with a local production company and the gear was the same. The vocabulary was different. And that's history. That's how I ended up doing this.
Oh man, they're lucky to have you. I mentioned that you've worked with quite a few artists, and it seemed like you've really hit the ground running. Working with Heart. Now this is a band that we've had. I've had many guests on that have had very close relations with him. I've worked with him quite a bit. My brother and myself. Exciting band. How was your experience with Heart?
It was amazing, and I think that my opportunity that I had to work with Heart was one of those kind of life-changing moments for me. I'd been on a couple of smaller regional tours. I'd been on a national tour and had not a great time. And then I had the opportunity to go out just on a regional run with Heart as a technician. And it was a moment where I realized that touring could be a family and it could be a career and it could be something that's artistic and fulfilling and not just, waiting for your countdown timer to get you back to your home airport. So having the opportunity to kind of cut my teeth with a band that's already legendary and already feels like a family was just a really amazing, incredible opportunity.
They tend to really understand how, when you've done something for 40 years, you tend to get your head around it. And their crews, again, I have many friends that have worked in different positions with them. Excellent band, true professionals, and the crew is really above reproach. Royal Albert Hall. Now, what a venue. I know you did a live stream out of there with Heart. Man, when you discussed it with me, when we were talking initially, you said you did a throw and go. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I had spent some time working with another band. I left Heart to go work with the Waterboys for a year, which was incredible, and I got to see a lot of Europe and a lot of the UK and Australia for the first time as well. Okay. And when they asked me to come back to work with Heart as their lighting director instead of just as a substitute lighting director or as a technician, they asked me to come back and be their lighting director for this year with a big tour. But we started out with this little UK run, and the very first show of the run was a live DVD shoot at Royal Albert Hall.
Wow, what a place.
So, so we got over to the UK, super jet lagged, and there was already a gig in there the day before. So we did not have any time to tech our new rig live. We didn't have any time to load in early or program early. So we just had to roll in and go. And they wanted to do it with, we filmed with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra as well. So they rehearsed during sound check, and I was very lucky to have an incredibly competent and flexible house LD that day, who was right there with me running all of the, the house rig kind of in time with our concert rig. So it was a really, really intense day. And at the end of it, I just went,
yeah, you could breathe again.
Sure.
No, that's well. Plus, you were putting it to DVD, so there's a couple pressures at play there, and it's the Royal Albert Hall. So some of the best live shows have been captured at that place, and it's just a phenomenon. It's absolutely beautiful. Switching over to Ani DiFranco, what a belter! I mean, just an incredible artist. That had to be a lot of fun.
It was great. It was really, really good. That was one of the tours where they call you up and they say, we need an LD, but we don't really have a budget for a rig. So having the opportunity to kind of work with her music and her passion and her poetry. And the only thing we carried on that tour was a gobo that had her Rise Up logo for that tour. So just kind of making sure that we advanced well and just getting in there and having a good time with the music every night with whatever we had at the venue it's kind of freeing, really.
Yeah, no, I tend to enjoy the throw and go on that. It makes it more challenging, more interesting, and for a person like you in the lighting arts, which I tend to see as a little bit more of a creative pursuit, I could see there be a little, like the word freeing is definitely kind of sums it up. So I could see the benefits of that. That sounds a lot of fun. You mentioned earlier, a second ago, that you worked with the Irish band. They're kind of my understanding is kind of an Irish folk band. Folk rock, kind of in the Proclaimers kind of area lane, the Waterboys. I don't think very well known here in America, but they are. I was checking them out, and they had, I think one thing I saw had 62 million views. They have definitely a dedicated following. What was your experience with those guys?
So the Waterboys are great. It's kind of hard to summarize like their genre because they've been around for decades, and they have definitely kind of ridden creative waves throughout their time. And it was really fantastic because they have these folksy, artsy, poetic roots. And you can really tell that kind of passion feeds directly into the way that they play on stage. So getting the chance to kind of get underneath their music and kind of try and be a part of that passion that they bring to the stage was really, really fantastic. And it just so happened that probably the one you saw with a lot of views was their song Fisherman's Blues, I'm guessing.
It was,
and that album and I both turned 25 on the road together.
Oh, how
which
fun.
The band did not think was very funny. But
well, it's adorable in its own kind of way, but sometimes as older guys we struggle when we are reminded of our age, and so. But it's good for us to know, and I'm pretty sure as I go into my older days here, that the guys, the young folks coming up like yourself, like Mikey and Kyle here, are really the future of this business, and so it's nice to get your approach and your take on it. We've kind of been doing it for a while, and some of the older guys need to kind of pull back and let you guys come in with your ideas and your approach to the gear and the process. So that's a good thing. My good friend Kyle has a question for you.
Let's go. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we're not getting Kyle, Michael. I think somebody asked you what your favorite board to work on, Grandma. 1, 2.
Sure.
Or have you worked with the 3 yet?
Yeah, so the console that I'm most familiar with is the Grand MA2. It's what we programmed the Shed Tour for Heart on, and I've just found it to be an incredibly intuitive console. And I've just barely gotten my hands on the MA3 before the pandemic hit, and kind of knocked out that opportunity. But I've found a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? I've been incredibly lucky to have gotten my hands on probably one of every console that every venue has, because when you're touring without a rig, without a console, you have to be able to make a show happen on anything.
Yeah.
So if someone put me in front of, an old Ava Lights Pearl and then something that I didn't know, I would be so excited to get on that Pearl and rock out a show. But if I'm programming a show to carry with me, the Grandin May 2, I think, is the one that I would probably still go for, just because it's so comfortable.
Yeah, I think a lot of lighting technicians would agree with you on that. Lighting designers, that seems to be the general consensus amongst you folks. And we use one here in the house, and it's very utilitarian. It gets the work done for sure, and there's a certain rhythm to it, certain flow. I mentioned that you work with Pink. Now, my history with Pink is wow. Like, really, we throw up some Metallica shows and Def Leppard and Iron Maiden. We do some big shows, but Pink brings a little something extra. It's hard to explain a Pink show. It's almost like Broadway meets rock and roll, and I'm not exactly sure how to articulate it. And I know I think she's one of your most recent acts you've worked with. Can you tell us what a typical day in the life of doing a Pink tour show is? Kind of from load in.
Well, we kind of covered a lot of ground with that tour. So I worked on the Beautiful Trauma tour as a technician. I covered the Follow Me station, which is the remote follow spot system for that. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do both years of that tour cycle, 2018 and 2019. And we did arenas, we did stadiums. We did stadiums in Australia where we kind of parked up for a couple of weeks straight, where we only loaded in once and then loaded out after, several shows. So those days, when we're in arena, we go in 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, load that sucker in, get sound check done, do the show, and we're out of there maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m. But when we got to those stadium shows and we really had to kind of size up the rig quite a bit.
Yeah.
There were some days where we saw the sunrise on both ends. So eventually, obviously, with any big tour, you eventually get into a flow with something. But, if you want to have a production that's that big, you have to have a schedule that's that big too.
Yeah, put in the work for sure. How big is an average Pink lighting package in the number of 53s?
I should have rememred that number.
I would have thought it would be etched into your brain just from trauma.
A lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, though. I mean, I kind of look at the endless line of them. We did this with Taylor Swift Goes Big. An odd one was Miley Cyrus, 38 rigs. And it's one of those things it's kind of between the awe of the size of the show and then, the trauma of the size of the shows kind of just etches into your mind. But regardless, you worked with Trey Songz. How was that? Did you find any extra challenges working in the rap genre and the tendency to kind of be minimalistic in the lighting?
Well, so that was actually my first national tour that I had the opportunity to do as a technician. So I think I was probably pretty overwhelmed just by trying to keep up with everything at that point in my career,
sure,
that I wouldn't have known how to compare it to any other, artistic venture at that point in time. But it was a really, really good learning experience for me. We carried a rig full of Mac 2Ks, which I'm sure any other lighting technician watching this is going, ooh.
Yeah, right.
So learned how to field strip and fix one of those in the dark. No problem.
That's right. Yeah.
But it was a really good first experience as like a national touring production for me.
Oh, I'm sure it was a lot of fun. Do you have any preference? I kind of do this question when it comes up, and it comes up frequently more and more with audio and lighting, do you have a preference to doing rap type shows versus rock shows?
Kind of depends. So I came up in the theater world, right? So I've definitely had a lot more experience with kind of like carefully programmed artistic, even like dance-like shows. So a lot more ethereal kind of music. But a rock show with a park hand rig is it's like it brings something out in me that I just absolutely love, the improvisation of it and the power of it.
Yeah.
And just getting in there and like really becoming part of the music in that way,
sure,
is something you can't beat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that feeling that you're referring to is kind of the thing that brings us back every time. at least for me. The difference between doing, so we mentioned rap and rock. How about, I know you have some experience with Heart, Waterboys, and Wilson doing some live streaming events, as well as working them live. Do you have, and to me there seems to be a distinct difference in the lighting approach, color balancing, so on, with live streaming where you're kind of more getting the show to be what you see on TV versus the live approach, which what we see with our eyes. Do you have a preference there?
Well, I think it depends on this is a tough question too, right? Because everything these days ends up on YouTube, even if that's not what you're intending it to do.
Good point.
And I think that's something that a lot of lighting designers right now are being more conscientious of. Like, how is this going to look through a phone camera? And I think you guys as audio engineers and audio designers always get the notes from the artist like, oh, I saw this video on YouTube and it sounded awful.
Right.
It's like, well, that's because you heard it through someone's phone, right?
Yeah.
But you still need to kind of be aware of like how your color mixing looks on camera. You need to be aware of if you're washing people out on camera, if your looks are symmetrical on camera, even if they're captured in the middle of a big ballyhoo or something. So, I mean, I always prefer to light for the live audience because that's where my eyeballs are at that time as well. But it definitely is, it's an important thing to remember when you're doing a live stream. How can you make it feel like a live show for everyone who's watching it on a screen as well?
Well, I have to say that is probably the best answer I've had given to that question ever, because I couldn't agree with you more. We're transitioning, and a little bit forced transition, but you're not wrong. Before this all happened, that transition was in full effect. It was happening, but I think it's sped up some, and being more mindful of the fact that it kind of needs to be the best approach for both kind of formats, the live format, and of course its replay format is probably the best approach. So that was very interesting. Freelancing for the Boston Ballet. Now that is like the real deal. The Boston Ballet. How was that for you? Did you enjoy that?
So that's a lot of shop work, which is great because you end up, it's funny because you end up with these like really fantastic professionals who just happen to have a day off. So a lot of folks in Boston who are in the film local, and a lot of folks who work in our IATSE local as well, who just happen to be able to take these shop calls. So it's actually a really great time to kind of bounce ideas off of other people while you're just kind of building hang tapes and whatnot. And, you know, it's my little way to feed my soul in terms of making sure that I keep a toe in the arts while I'm out on the road. It's not like I'm out there actually doing a lighting focus for the ballet, but I really love making sure that I'm staying involved in that side of the arts while I'm out.
Oh, yeah, I could totally understand that. And so you're one of the. It sounds like you're cool with the side of it where, you know, like you mentioned, you know, field teching and stripping lights in the field as well as doing shop. So you're kind of comfortable in both worlds, as the show world and also, you know, making things happen and you know, problem solving on the fly.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think you probably also see this in audio, I'm guessing, where a lot of the technology, you have to make sure that you can tech it yourself. And I've worked with lighting directors who don't necessarily know the tech as well as we do, or I've been that lighting director who doesn't know the tech that I have my hands on. And it's really frustrating when you can't be a part of the solution. So I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of know as much as I can about the technology that I'm using to make sure that I can fix a problem if something arises, or if someday, I hope, I get to design something that's huge. I know what I'm putting people through with what I'm implementing as part of a design. That's
perfectly understandable. Yes, I like to think that as technicians, we are at our best when we can kind of put out fires as they happen and make things happen on the fly, as well as be able to then make the gear as it's working properly, you know, deploy it as it's supposed to be. And so, yeah, that's something I try to get the youngsters in the game to kind of appreciate that, how important that is. It's critically important, especially when you're touring. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Kevin O'Brien said, "Hey, Gabi," from the North Jersey IATSE Sisters and Brothers at the Mayo Pack Center in Morristown. So I
miss those folks.
I just wanted to make sure I did that for Kevin. Also, you worked with All Time Low. They're a very specific band. How was that for you?
That was a fun one. That was just a quick little ripper of a gig. I ran out there as the solo tech for a little bit. And then my amazing, actually currently my roommate, my dear friend from East Coast Lighting came out and joined me after a few weeks to tech that with me for the LD Jeff Meeker, who is amazing.
Yeah, very talented.
Wonderful. And it was a really fun, like we were talking about kind of working with within different genres of touring. Working with All Time Low was another great genre to kind of dip a toe into because it came from these like great grassroots, like kind of punk lifestyle that you don't necessarily get to work with all the time. So we might have been playing some more challenging venues, but the spirit of everybody involved was so upbeat and so positive, and the fan base was so great that it was hard to feel dragged down at the end of the day when everyone else is just lifting you up. It was a lot of fun.
That sounds great. Yeah, there seems to be a certain kind of sensibility in I would call them kind of a post or proto-punk band. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they're a lot of fun. And it kind of is the general vibe. You go out with Rancid or Suicidal or bands like that, and they have a kind of a stage presence. But what happens backstage tends to be much more family kind of brotherly thing in the modern era. When we came up in the early days. When I started in the punk rock business, it wasn't really a business at the time. It was just a thing, and it was different. And I think over time, as the artists have aged in the process and time in the fans, it's and for me invariably a more intimate and fun experience than doing some of the larger shows, which have their own challenges and great things about them. But yeah, I can totally relate to that. In your experience to date, now you've worked with some great acts, some really fun bands. Do you have a favorite moment?
A favorite moment? I mean, there are so many, right? And like for so many different reasons. Just there was, for example, on the Ani DiFranco tour, there was one evening where we had to do that drive from San Francisco to LA. And I'm sure everyone's kind of been in that moment where the tour manager says, all right, do we want to park up outside the gig in San Francisco and then drive into LA to get the hotels mid-morning? Or do we want to drive straight there and hope they have rooms ready for us, right? So we're just hanging out, killing time outside the Fillmore in San Francisco. And it was just a really great night of hanging out and like good jams on the bus, a great conversation. And it was one of those just moments where you're like, is this my life? Like if I told 16-year-old me that this is what I would be doing on like a Wednesday night with that,
Oh,
and I think those are, it sounds like a very simple memory, but just being able to kind of close your eyes and remember those feelings and sitting in that moment, I think are some of the most valuable things that we get out of the road.
Oh, that's a very sweet memory. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I think there's, once you kind of get into the grind of being on tour, that irrepressible kind of nomad quality that comes with it. And that if you embrace it, you can find moments when you need to pinch yourself and like, go, wow, this is what I get to do for a living, and feel pretty lucky. And I think we are lucky in that what we get to do. And as a result, I try not to share it too often because I don't think it's easily relatable, with the folks that aren't in the game. And so I'm glad that you've had that. And I think you've got an incredibly bright future ahead of you. My goodness, I mean, your resume so far is really impressive, and
well, thanks.
And I can only imagine things that you'll get up to, and some of the relationships. A lot of this is networking and building relationships along the way. And so it seems like you're making some good connections from here. Some of the folks that you've worked with. I noticed that you came to one of my roadie pages recently, and you answered the questions to get in, and one part of it said that you were an all-around coffee drinker.
Oh, yeah.
That was very cute. Well, so do you think, so when in my day, we used other parts of the periodic table to motivate ourselves. But it seems in the world of Starbucks and Pete's and so on, that seems to be the go-to of choice. So you find that coffee is a big part of the working environment, the kind of efficiency rates of working in the modern touring industry?
So I have definitely, faced my fears in terms of trying to cut back, right? Like, it becomes a default thing. I don't smoke cigarettes. So it became like, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. Like, you all figure this out. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, or I need a break from this cup of coffee. My hands are cold, cup of coffee. Like, it's a good default. Like, I'm going to walk away for a moment.
Sure.
And then, of course, you end up drinking the dregs of 8-hour-old catering coffee, and that's not good for anybody.
Right.
But in more recent years, is actually a friend on the Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness tour kind of turned me on to the AeroPress as a means for brewing. And I thought it was some kind of hipster bullshit when he showed me. And then I tried it and I was like, this is brilliant. So I don't know if you've seen these things. It looks like a little science experiment, but it's made out of plastic. It's indestructible. You could put it in your suitcase. And having this little coffee ritual with me in my suitcase has become one of the most grounding rituals, just of like kind of centering myself on the road. It means that you can have a really good cup of coffee in any weird smelly hotel room, in any bus kitchenette, in any catering room. You can just make yourself this thing that kind of is consistent and is what you want to have in that moment. And I have found that to be absolutely priceless.
Oh, that sounds like a really good, if you're listening out there, folks, that actually sounds like you're really dialing in the road experience to work for you. And it's the little things, God lives in the details. If there's a God at all, he lives in the little stuff. And it's those little things that can really make the difference.
Hey, Tony Lewis chimed in and said, what's your favorite personal jam music?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Man, okay. Hear me out, guys. Rusted Root always brings it back home.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm up for anything Queens of the Stone Age. I'm just pretty much 24/7. Just put it in, and it's going to put a spring in my step. We all got something, I guess, right?
You gotta.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you. If somebody, a young person and an associate was coming to you and asking you advice, what they should do to become successful, to get into this business, would you give them advice? Would you advise them away from the industry? How would you proceed with something like that?
Well, I think anybody who comes to you and says, I want to try out this industry, let them make that decision. Like, this industry either shows you that you will make it or that you don't have it. And like, that's for each of us to experience on our own. Right. So, and I certainly had plenty of people tell me like, oh, you're too nice for this. And I was like, fuck you. Do what I want.
Perfect. Yeah.
But I think what I would say to someone is to embrace the opportunities that you're given, right? Like, you can always, if you don't feel safe working for someone or with someone or in a certain situation, you can always leave, but you're not going to get those opportunities if you kind of nip them in the bud, right? So I would tell a young person who wants to learn more and to do more in this industry just to say yes, the opportunities that show up.
Yes. Yes is a very helpful word. And we mentioned this before we went on the air, having as many talents in your given part of your trade, abilities, tools in your toolbox, as it were, is very helpful. So we try to cross-train in here in our shop. This is a question that came up that came into my mind based on the answer that you just gave us. And forgive me if it comes off uncouth. I want it to sound right. Have you noticed in the industry, is there any particular challenges to being a female in the industry, which is rather a male-dominated industry?
Like, do you want the 6-hour-long answer?
I might have opened up a can of worms here, but I mean, really do.
But it is a can of worms.
Well, but I am very interested in your perspective on this because I notice on my pages, for example, in my roadie groups, we do analytics on the show, we do analytics on the pages, and it shows that it's probably somewhere between a 13 and 18% female audience that we reach out to. I know this in my hiring. When we're looking for folks to work with, we try to be as inclusive as possible. Of course, also taking into account talent and skills. But there's when I'm looking for 10 people, there may be 2 females in that group, and that's just the working pool I have to work with. So is there something going on that we're doing or that we could be doing better as a bunch of knuckleheaded males in this industry to make it so that you felt like you can answer that question easily?
Yeah, well, I do know that there is a generation of really badass women who have been paving the way for women in my age group.
Absolutely.
And I owe a whole career to them and the shit they put up with and the shit they wouldn't stand for. And the fact that they just got in there and did their jobs and did them well and proved that, like, it doesn't matter. We're here to do our jobs. So what I would say, it kind of comes with a little bit of a story, if that's okay.
Oh, please. I would like you to expand on this as much as you feel comfortable.
So there was the 2016 tour that I did with Heart was a shed tour. It was great. I was the lighting director for Heart. We had 2 other bands on the bill with their own LDs, and they were both amazing dudes, and they're, you know, storied and should also be on this show with you guys. They're great. But what we ended up doing was we were at some venue, I think in North Carolina, working with the local crew, chatting with one of the other LDs about who's running the snake, who's doing this, who's doing that, who's tipping the desk for us. And out of nowhere, stagehand lets himself into a conversation. He's like, oh, someone sounds like she's in charge. And I was like, yes. So anyway, you're not part of this conversation. And later on, the same guy kind of approached me off to the side and implied that I should see him in the backseat of his car later.
Oh my God.
And so I went to my crew chief and I said, Matthew, I don't know who this guy is, but I don't want to see him on my spot call, and I don't want to see him in our department for loadout. And my crew chief took it to the local chief, who came to me and said, I am incredibly sorry. I have daughters and I would never want them to go through that, and I will take care of this. And he reported it to their HR department. The guy was fired. He obviously was not back for show call, which was great. But for the rest of the day, the rest of my crew kept coming up to me, people being like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm like, this happens all the time. Like, this is just the first time somebody did something about it.
Wow.
And I was not just surprised that someone did something about it, but I was surprised that I felt surprised that someone did something about it, because that should be the norm.
Absolutely.
And it turned out that this guy was kind of a creep, and a lot of the local lady stagehands also came to me and were like, thank you. Like, we've been dealing with that for a long time. So what we can do as an industry is to call each other out on our bullshit, make sure that we're not letting that happen. And it doesn't matter. I think that went as far as it did because I happened to be the LD for the headlining band. I'd like to think that if I were just, you know, a kid with a vendor, that it would have also been taken as seriously. But we need to make sure that we're holding each other accountable when we see these things happen.
I personally will knock and you can kind of ask anybody that knows me, I will knock somebody straight the fuck out, excuse my language, in a moment like that. I wouldn't hesitate twice. And that's probably the inappropriate way to, but I absolutely have a daughter and a mother and sisters and a woman I love. And that is absolutely inappropriate. Our comm lines over here and our comments are firing off like crazy. The comments like girl power, we need more females in the game, so on and so forth. I think we can all easily, happily agree that that is absolutely unacceptable, and good for you for sticking up for what's right and for women in general. And, you know, there's always going to be knuckleheads out there. And because we're a little testosterone heavy in the game, that needs to be sorted. And luckily, the evolution of the mind, I've watched it happen over the last 30 years. It's happened to me, frankly. I was much more narrow-minded knucklehead in the 80s. Not as much about women, but in other ways, kind of punk rock ways that needed to be kind of sorted out over time and with age and, you know, growing with a little grace. And I feel like that's happening in our industry, but we're not there yet for sure, and your experience proves that. So I can assure you that here at Sound Image, we are extraordinarily mindful of how that employees in general, regardless of gender, interact with each other. It's critically important to, you know, having a kind of a harmonious way to run business and to legally create a safe space for everybody. And that goes without saying it. Now, of course, roadies, with that said, you know, we're knuckleheads. We kind of have a little bit sense of humor that can be a little bit colorful. And there's a certain amount that you leave for that, but there's never, I can imagine, I can't say, my wife just said, atta girl, she's with you all the way. And of course she is. You know, although we might tell some colorful jokes and occasionally speak fluent French, it's never allowed to go into a place of, where it's a gender specific and or lifestyle specific. These are unacceptable places to, people that deal with artists like we do. I'd like to think we're of a little bit more open mind and a little more evolved thought than some of our counterparts in the civilian life. So I'm glad to hear that you've dealt with that in a logical way that had positive results. And hopefully going forward that's something that you experience less and less.
Yeah, and I think that the more we can make this just an equitable space for all kinds of people, we're going to get the talents that all of those people possess, and it's just going to improve the industry overall. So I completely agree.
Well, it's partly cultural. If you look at a place like Israel, where a female, male, everybody goes into the military, there's no really gender imbalance as it relates to a sense of what a person can do based on gender, and it's a little bit of an old Protestant way that still lingers with some of the old white guys on the planet, and it's not to our credit. So it's people like you doing the right thing. Hopefully, people management like me that when we are made aware of something not going correctly or that's inappropriate, we will drop a hammer down quick and respond appropriately to something like that, because it just has no place in the industry. Zero, no place. So good for you. I'm kind of proud of you right now. Good stuff. Let me ask you. You've been in the game long enough. You've been watching what's going on in our situation in the industry. What's your sense of how we're going to work our way out of this thing and back into some work?
Oh man, I don't know. I've had so many long conversations with friends about, how we think it might go. And I think we all just need to trust that this is going to take some time to build back up to the level of productions that we were seeing, in 2019. At the beginning of 2020, because not only is this lack of work and income damaging the individuals, it's damaging the infrastructure of the way that our businesses work and the way that, our venues and our locals and all that is being harmed right now. So it's going to take some time for us to recover from that. But knowing the spirits of the people around us, it's going to happen, if there's nothing we know how to do better, it's we know how to push through hard times.
Oh, absolutely. What do you think about this proposal? Again, on the groups we have we make memes and we make funny about, the kind of ability for an average industry crew to grab a hold of a situation and, slam it into a facility, make it by doors, under all these deadlines, constraints, people come in, we make the show happen. That's kind of the roadie way. And I know our industry reached out to government to potentially offer our services and our kind of logistics skills and our getting things done kind of work ethic to helping out in this kind of moment. Do you think that's something that's viable?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is.
Yeah, I think we could at least give them a couple quick lessons on how to get things done in a timely way and on to the next thing. It might be an interesting approach. Listen, it's been a great treat to talk with you tonight. Thank you so much for making time for us. I know you're on the East Coast, so you're up a little later. We very much appreciate it. It's been a delight to get to know you and hear your stories. We have big hopes for you. I hope to see you sometime out in our world and in the touring world and work with the big bands. And we wish you the best. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, ma'am. Very cool. Guys, listen, what a great guest. I couldn't be more lucky. I don't know how I get, turned on to such great people. She was lovely. We have big stuff coming up in the weeks ahead. We're really excited about next week. We've got the one and only Ken Van Dorten. Also, you may know him as Pooch. That's Van Halen's engineer, Kiss's guy, currently with Iron Maiden. He's a general all-around god in this game. And I always tell the guys when I'm trying to motivate him, that we want them to grow up and be like Pooch or Greg Price or Brad Maddox. So we got Pooch coming in next week. He's a wonderful man, incredibly talented. So please tune in for that. That's
what
7 p.m.
Mike's fighting for, is to be a baby Pooch.
It's his birthday, man. What the hell? Be nice to Mike. but Mike's well on his way, because Mike is sharp as a damn tack, and if anybody could make it to the levels that Pooch has made it.
Ear, dude.
I mean, I'll tell you this. Greg Price said about Mike, just as an aside, Greg Price is Ozzy's guy. He's our dear friend. He's right here in the building. And that's Ozzy, Rage Against the Machine, Smashing Pumpkins, Van Halen, one of the biggest engineers in the world, one of the most accomplished. Said of Michael one day, he let him play with some of Mr. Crowley Rough Stems board mixes, and said that was the best mix that he had ever heard anybody do of a Ozzy song. Now if Greg Price says that, and he's not real fast and loose with the compliments. He
sure isn't.
He kind of keeps it close. For him to say that about Mike Brown, our executive producer, the man mixing the sound right now, that's kind of a huge thing to say. And we were, if you remember at the time, we were all like, God damn.
Yeah, good job, dude.
Quite a statement. When Greg Price says that, that's like a thing. So you were being kind of cute, but I think seriously,
definitely seriously.
Somebody at some point is taking over for the people like Greg Price and Brad Maddox, when they hang up their spurs. And in my mind, it's people like yourself and Mikey Brown and others that we work with, because you guys really are the next wave, and we feel very strongly about that. And that's the whole idea of
I'm starting to call him Baby Pooch from now on.
I'd get that cleared if I was you. He's going to start muting you.
At age 33, he's just... he muted me. There we go. That's awesome.
See, you don't fuck with the sound guy. Everybody on that side of the camera, you respect as best you can. I want to send some love out to my dear, dear friend, John Del Rio, who has the page Loving Hands for Stagehands. I really appreciate him very much. He's running a service over there on Facebook, a closed group called Loving Hands for Stagehands. That's really necessary, I feel, right now. And they run it with care and kindness. And if you need to go kind of, work on some stuff's bugging you, there's some like-minded folks in the industry over there. And Johnny and my brother run that, and Bob Powers. It's a great thing. So I would very much check in. Send some love out to our dear, dear friend, Charlie Zaricki. We got mad love for him. He's a brother and a half. Charlie, keep an eye out for the mail. We're sending you something. And of course, Tony Lewis, an extraordinary light guy and a crack up, and he's all over our pages and just a good friend. So right on, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it very much. I wanted to send a special note out to Clint Winsley. Clint Winsley's Crew Music Asia. He had the unfortunate. Crew Music Asia implies exactly what it is. He had a huge career in China and associated areas with some very, very large concerns over there right at the time that this whole COVID thing took off, and he had to get out of Dodge and went to his home country of Canada. And we helped him out with that. There was it's too deep of a story, but we helped him do that to get him across the Pacific to where he should have been. And he sent us a card. This is only a year ago, the 20th, when he got out of Hong Kong. And he sent us this card, which is really very, very nice, saying, thanks for us being brothers and being there for him when he needed us. And he sent back some love in the card, which was absolutely unnecessary and very sweet. We helped out because of the love and the brotherhood. But that was very sweet, Clint. We're glad to hear. Clint signed a 3-year deal here recently to get back into Asia and do what he does, which is put on very, very big shows. And we're excited for him. So, Clint, our best to you, my brother. We want you to succeed and be happy, and we're really glad to hear that that's going your way. A quick shout out to some of our sponsors, Sweet Treatments, Chef's Touch, Diablo Digital, LSV, the great people at LSV, and of course our parent company, which is Sound Image Productions and Southern California Sound Image, and the great Dave Shadona, George Edwards. We appreciate you guys a great deal. Thank you very much. Next week again, we've got Pooch Van Dorten is going to be on. He's going to talk big rock and roll, giant shows, working for some of the best. I suggest you tune in. It will be a great show. Until then, if you like what you see, we're here on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Mark, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Keep an eye out for some merchandising opportunities coming up. We love you guys. Take very good care of yourselves. Be kind to each other. Good night.